I have the feeling my kids and my grandchildren, they may be asking me the same question one day on what's happening today. What did you do when you still had a choice? How did you try to influence what is happening today? So I'm Thibauld Berly. I'm a partner and founder at Labs.earth. I'm French. I'm based in Germany, and my career path led me from a service actually called Media Lab to the creation of a company called Impact Labs, and from marketing tech to nature tech. So I guess I've been trying to be sustainable and recycle my capabilities along the way. And before I founded Impact Labs 2 years ago, I used to work 15 years in digitization and transformation projects for big companies, both on the consulting side and on the corporate side. On the corporate side, I spent 10 years with the cosmetic giants L'Oréal, both working in France, in the headquarters, and in Germany on the DACH region. And I was always convinced of the importance of the environmental transition and the essential role companies can play into this. So, I mean, you have like 370 million companies that are employing 1.5 billion people. So companies are probably the right scale to be the locomotive of the change that we need, the sustainability transformation that we need. And the reason why is also because they can apply like a perfect recipe for change. You can think big, the potential influence of a company is huge. You can reinvent your own business model to have a positive impact. You can involve your suppliers, all your partners in that change. You can plan long-term, which is not like politics. The objectives can be the product of your vision, and you can set the frame for it to happen. Then you can also start small, be super agile, foster innovation, test, learn new things, and then scale fast at the end. So that's why we think companies actually instrumental in the environmental transition that we actually need. And on my side, I've been working on sustainability projects my whole career. I try to, even if I was in other roles, I tried to pick those projects, and I ran the first carbon footprint for media agencies back then in 2007. It was one of the first projects I worked on when I started my career. So I always had that in mind, but then it accelerated quite a lot, like 2 years ago. So a few things happened in the same time. I turned 40, so I wanted to make something out of my midlife crisis, if you want. I started reading many books, way too many books, on climate change, on nature crisis, all those topics that are a bit, that can bring a bit of anxiety. And also at some point I told myself, I did ask my grandfather, myself, what did you do during the World War II? Did you fight? Did you hide? Did you flee away? Did you collaborate? And I have the feeling my kids and my grandchildren, they may be asking me the same question one day on what's happening today. What did you do when you still had a choice? How did you try to influence what is happening today? So that's when I decided to step into a new adventure and to co-found Labs.earth, which is dedicated to support the sustainable transformation of companies.
Really cool. Very inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it's a valid point. I sometimes think like this about my daughter as well. How are you going to live? And what is the footprint I'm leaving? And everyone always says, yeah, but I'm just a small little person, right? And it's not all on me. There is bigger things. And that's what you're trying to solve, right? Because businesses, if anyone leaves that footprint, is the businesses, and they can change a few things. So talk me through what companies do for that sustainability and environment, and how technology supports that and helps. And obviously, the obvious one is, don't print on a piece of paper. That if something can be digitally sent over email, it's probably one step, but that's just the entry level. Talk me through some great case study about how technology can help companies be more sustainable.
Sure. So maybe a few words of introduction about what we do at Impact Labs, because you already mentioned, technology can play a big role in that transformation. That's what we are convinced about as well. So that's one of our specificity. We believe in the role of technology to accelerate that transition. And to support this vision, we've put together what we call a Digital for Impact Tech Radar, which is actually a scan of all the technology that can help companies accelerate their transition across the board, across their value chain, starting from raw materials sourcing all down to the end of life, and then all the way back with recycling. And we've been helping companies find the right technology that they would need for their specific challenge. If I take an example, we've been working with Pure. Pure is a nature-based solution project developer. So that means they're planting trees or they're doing agroforestry, reforestation for carbon credits, but also to build nature equity for companies. So that means they work with big companies that task them to, plant trees in the middle of coffee plantations, for example, to sequestrate carbon and reduce the emission at the end. What we saw with Pure is that they were collecting a lot of data manually across the board with the tens of thousands of farmers they were working with worldwide on, how did the trees survive, how big they were, and how much CO2 they were sequestrating. And what we said is, look, there are some technologies out there that can help you complement that process. From the farmers actually taking pictures and sending pictures to a centralized tool. There is a way to automate partially the way we measure things. And that is the case with a technology that is called remote sensing, that is using satellite data images that we then translated into models that were calculating based on the pixels you have on the satellite images into what is this tree, what is the species, how big is it, how is the biomass, and then at the end, how much CO2 you did sequestrate through the this tree. And that at scale, it could help, complementing the measurements that they were having on their ground field data as well. So that's a very concrete example. And this leads me to the second specificity of Impact Labs. What we are doing is we're working a lot with impact startups, scale-up companies, so people that are in business for impact, to have a positive impact. And we help them getting better at what they do. And by doing so, we learn a lot. And this knowledge we can transfer to more traditional companies that are trying to be more sustainable. So we are trying to build bridges between the two. That's the second specificity. And the third one is we are trying to walk the talk. So we are really trying to be exemplary, to build a model of a company of the future, if you want, by creating the conditions for all salaries and partners to be really fully dedicated and to be congruent with their own values. And so we have the right internal policies to do so. We are also not trying to make a lot of money on the back of our employees or on the back of our clients. So we have a very healthy, transparent business model. The salary of myself and my partner, they are capped. We have rate cards that are affordable for people who want to start their transition. So that's super important. And what we did is also we formalized this into a few commitments. So we committed to 1% for the planet. So 1% of our revenue is we give it for associations that are supporting environmental causes. We are also B Corp certified. We are one of the highest scores, and probably the highest score for a consultancy worldwide. And we have a few things that we are doing to commit to that objective of being an exemplary company and to be ourselves the change we want to see in the world.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, but now what I'm wondering is what drives those companies to bring that change, right? When I believe when they hear it, it feels to them like, okay, that's just a cost, right? What are the, what they can benefit as a company? And they are very often for profits. So that's how they very often operate in terms of decision making. So I've got a couple of questions. One is, what drives them? What is that one thing that maybe unlocks those conversations? And over the last 2 years, what you found that started those conversations for you, maybe who is the person within the company? How did you approach them and started having those, more meaningful conversations about what they want to do, what they can do for the environment? So yeah, those two parts, essentially what drives them to start looking into this. And the second part, how did you manage over the last 2 years to start those conversations and really educate them about, why they should look into sustainability or offsetting carbon or making them environment-friendly choices? How did that work for you guys?
Yeah. So I think the two questions are very related to each other. So I try to answer the two in once. So you can be passionate about your topic, and it can be probably, in my opinion, the most important thing we need to do right now is to change, businesses to make them more sustainable so that we can create a livable future for the next generation. It's difficult to discuss that, but even if you have that, people will just follow their belief and what drives them. And you're not going to be able to change that in one or even a few conversations. So what you need to do is, it's like in any business and any marketing decision, you need to focus on your target and understand what your target wants. And as you mentioned, there are people that are convinced we should make a change for a greater good, for all these reasons. And there are people that, they want to see the return on investment, or people that would consider this as a potential differentiator in terms of image for their company. So you need to find what that trigger would be. And there is a long list of positive impacts beyond the impact on the environment and society. So making your business more resilient and future-proof. We are seeing all the environmental extreme events that are happening now. If you don't work on your supply chain to make it more resilient, you will have problems with your business in the future. So that's a very simple example that everyone can understand. Consumers also expect from companies to drive that change and to be showing what they are doing in that direction. So, building what you are doing in terms of sustainable transformation into your communication without, of course, getting into greenwashing and telling things you're not doing. So building first, of course, your concrete sustainable transformation and then telling it. It's also a way for you to differentiate from your competitors, of course, and to build your positioning on the market. So there are many ways that companies can leverage the sustainable transformation beyond doing that for a greater good, let's say.
Yeah, okay. So if I understand it correctly, the newer generation, and I know this, younger generation, are very conscious about this. They know it's a planet that they spend tens of years in, right? And they know that they need to take care of this right now. You can probably, just from common sense, they're more vegan, for example. They're really important for them how things are delivered, right? Is it shipped from the overseas, from China, for example, directly, or is it in a more sustainable way in terms of e-com? They do ask those questions. So what you're telling me is very often those companies will use that as their marketing angle, just to really stay in touch with the earth and really attract that maybe environment conscious consumer, and they can really shout out about it because they actually actively do things to make themselves better. Yeah, this is fascinating. Now, how in the last 2 years, what worked for you in terms of finding companies and starting the conversations with them? Who is that person in this company that, wants to hear more about this? I believe that bigger companies will have a sustainability officer and someone that is actually responsible for this, but the smaller companies don't have that position. So how did you guys manage to start those conversations, really educate your prospects, really start having discussions and build proposals and contracts and deals out of this?
We have, I would say, 3 types of people we are talking to. So the first one being the CTO or CDO, so people working with digital and data in companies. And we tried this because we believe, they would understand the next big things that is going to happen with data and digital is the sustainable transformation, because you will need to collect multiple sources of data for reporting perspective. They will be exposed to regulatory reporting obligations like the CSRD, like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which constrains the biggest companies in Europe to report on their environmental footprint overall. So this means there are a lot of fragmented data everywhere that you need to collect. You need to automate that collect. You need to be able to display the results of the data that you collected, to visualize it, to make it actionable for decision behind. And for this, you have a bunch of tools on the market. Same for carbon footprint. If you're a big company, you want to measure your carbon footprint, you need to collect data from your finance department, from your HR department. You need to do that in your multiple locations. All of those are big data and digital projects. But what we notice is that those guys, they didn't have that really on their agenda yet. Also, they didn't feel like they were, probably the decision owners on what should be automated, what tool should come in. So what we did is we changed the way we are talking to them. We still explain why we believe it's important, and then we ask them, please put us in relationship with the people that are dealing with sustainability in your organization. And in big organizations, as you mentioned, there is a chief sustainability officer. In the best case, they have a small team or bigger team even. And with those guys, we are managing to have that conversation on how technology and innovation will be necessary to drive the change. So we changed that, and it's working way better the way we are doing that right now. And then the last type of stakeholders we have are the owners of companies, like the CEOs from rather like smaller companies, of course. But here, this is where we have the most interesting conversations, because usually those conversations, they become personal, like the company is more like their own thing. They want to make something good out of it, and they want to, or they want and they can decide to go a bit deeper in the transformation they want to bring. So that's the three types of people where we are talking to. And I would say, so CDO, digital people are sometimes an entry door, but then we need to talk to someone else. With sustainability people in big companies, we are talking about how innovation, digital and data tools and technologies can help accelerate the transition and also integrate it better in the organization, so that it's not only on their shoulder, but that it's distributed across the organization, so that they don't have to do everything, like build a strategy, collect the data, visualize it, report to the board, report for the CSRD. It's quite complex to a life as a sustainability officer today. Mm-hmm. And then the last type of people we're talking to are the owner of the businesses. And again, here the conversation is a bit broader on what they want to achieve with their business in 10 years and what should be the milestones to transform their business.
Okay. So we start with measuring, like with every transformation. If I've got a ring that measures, how I sleep, how I move, how I should feel, right? And then the second I started measuring this, obviously, I want to improve. Like with every transformation and every change, you need to start with just analyzing, measuring how things are right now. Okay. Out of those companies, are there any that are easier to approach and start conversations and maybe start working with? Are those the bigger ones? Are those speaking to C-level or CEOs or owners of the smaller companies? Which ones over the couple of years you found easier to convince, and which ones a little bit more difficult to do so?
The thing is with big companies is you need to have your niche. You need to have your specific slot. Because all big consultancies, they've been smelling the blood for years already, and they've been looking into providing sustainability transformation services as well. It's not enough to come up with a small new brand and saying we want to help you in your sustainable transformation, because you're probably like the 50th people proposing this over the last couple of months, and out of the 50 others, you have like probably the big four plus a couple of big consultancies. So if you want to work with big corporates, then you need to have this specific positioning where you can really help them. And for us, what we noticed is where we can help is, using that position that we have, working with impact startups, being super connected in that environment to bring innovation to go to the next level for them. Working on a remote sensing project, for example, to take again the same example, working on a remote sensing project is not something that a lot of people out there have been doing. And we are capable of offering that very specific area of expertise. And that is how we angle our conversations with the bigger companies. And then for the SMEs, we have a different approach because we have as a philosophy that we want to make transformation affordable, and we have rate cards that are not driven by crazy margin or crazy salary on top of the organization. And we have our team sitting in Portugal, by the way, where conditions are a bit different. So we are capable of offering them rates for a project manager, for example, that they would integrate in their team to drive and build their sustainability strategy for a few months. And that's the type of angle that we take when we talk to smaller companies, actually, because usually what they have is they want to make a change, but they can't because they are not in the place where they can hire someone that is specialized. If they go to sustainability companies, consultancies, it's way too expensive. So they're a bit stuck in the middle and they don't know where to start. And again, what we propose is to make their transformation affordable because we believe that all companies need to transform.
Really cool. Really good. Okay. So I would like to also know, in terms of your growth, where would you like to be in another 2 years if we'll be having similar conversation in 2 years' time? Where would you say, Pete, this is best 2 years ever. It was fantastic. Where would you like to be as a company? That's my question number one. And two, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in this? And especially I'm talking about your growth.
So on growth, we are super careful with not having objectives that would completely distort the way we want to build the company. So we grew steadily the first 2 years. So now we are 13 people already. So it's working very well. This year, for example, we want to stabilize the business that we have and continue to grow slowly, but we don't have like crazy objectives of growth. What we would like to build over the next couple of years is a business that has a healthy growth rate per year of, let's say, 20%. And then what would be super interesting for us is also, open new geographies so that we can multiply our impact. And probably in Europe now, we are pretty good covered with, we have our office in Lisbon, in Paris, and in Cologne in Germany. And the next step, we will need to look into this depending on where the need is more pressing and also how we can better leverage what we have to offer. But it's going to be either in America or in Asia. That would be opening first a small office with a few people, and that would be amazing if we manage to reach that objective into the next 5 years.
And what would be the biggest challenge with this? Is that because it's completely brand new market and you're not familiar with this, opening the physical office, as I understand, what's the biggest challenge? Is that the very first connections with them, or once you've educated them, those companies or your prospects a little bit, actually turning that into a signed deal? Where do you find that the bigger challenges are in new markets for you?
So I think the thing with sustainable transformation is that it's very depending on multiple exogenous factors, including the political context. And what happened recently in the US, it doesn't make it very attractive for developing a business on sustainable transformation of companies. And this, I really see this as a challenge when we will be in a position to take a decision on what's going to be our next expansion, like worldwide. And I also think another consequence is that you need to be aware of, the culture of sustainability in a country. For example, in Germany and in France and in Spain or Portugal is completely different. The focuses are different. In Germany, it's a lot about mobility and energy. In France, you have huge things about the upskilling and transformation of the opinion. It's really completely different, even though we are all in Europe. And if you go to the US or Canada, then you will need to do that with someone that has experience in the local market and that understands those cultural changes. And also, of course, the regulation out there.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Yeah, you seem to have a lot of passion for this, for actually bringing, it's not a job for you, it's a mission, right? And you're expanding, and I hope it all works great for you, expanding the markets, signing more companies just to really help them. And what you're telling me is actually a fraction of the cost if they will try to tackle that themselves, because obviously you're very experienced in this, you do have a team, and you want to make it super affordable for companies to start at least assessing and then coming up with a plan to the budget, to the capabilities. So this is pretty cool. Just to finish off, tell us where we can find you online. Before the conversation, you've mentioned that you also have your own podcast. Tell us how the listeners could find you and find out more about how to make their companies or their departments more sustainable.
Yeah, sure. So you can find everything on our website, Labs.earth. And our podcast is called Reboot Business. And you can also find us on LinkedIn, of course, and we'd be more than happy to engage the conversation there.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thanks for this conversation. I hope that whoever listened to this was, engaged and really started thinking about being sustainable. I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete.